Hi there, Linda Berens here. Today we're going to take a look at another pattern of the 16 types, and that one is what we call the Harmonizer Clarifier, commonly known by the type code INFP. So as we take a look at this, I hope you see some similarities. It gives you a deeper understanding of what this pattern looks like. In understanding a living system, it's important to look at the pattern. And the pattern gives us information that is not available when we look at the various dynamics or the parts. So we like to start with thinking about each of the 16 types holistically as having a theme. There are other lenses that allow us to look at different aspects of that pattern. And the first one we'll take a look at is the essential motivator pattern. This tells us why we do what we do. It is a very informative pattern, otherwise known as temperament. It's been based on descriptions of personality differences that go back centuries. And after that, we'll take a look at the Harmonizer Clarifier through the lens of the interaction styles, and then the intentional drivers. And once we've done those, we'll take a look at the cognitive dynamics that gives us information about the mental processes that we tend to use, that this pattern will prefer. So now taking a look at the holistic theme, just kind of read this to you to give you some sense of it. Harmonizer Clarifier is characterized by having an energy that's about going with the flow and knowing what's behind what is being said, uncovering mysteries, exploring moral questions. They have a talent for facilitating listening. They relate through stories and metaphors very often. And balancing opposites. This is always something the Harmonizer Clarifier pattern wants to be doing. And life is kind of a process of getting reacquainted with themselves. They have a way of knowing what is believable and what's not believable, so can see through that. Struggling with structure sometimes and getting their lives in order. So this is the essence of that pattern, holistically speaking. If we look through the essential motivator lens, we can see that the pattern is catalyst, and the core psychological needs for this pattern are meaning and significance. They must have a sense of meaning and significance and a unique identity. Without this sense of unique identity, they can be quite lost and try on other identities just to find out, which ones really do fit. Kind of, I suppose, a little like trying on shoes. They have core values of authenticity, to be authentic. And it's interesting, this unity at the same time, the unique individual identity is important for them. They have sort of an idealized and meaningful worldview. That's what they highly value. And they want to have self-actualization for themselves and for others. And empathic relationships. This is something that this Harmonizer Clarifier craves. Their talent is for diplomacy, saying what needs to be said, when it needs to be said, and in a way that someone else will relate to it. They also have a talent for integrative thinking, for bringing together a lot of different perspectives on something. And they act sort of as a catalyzing transformer. So they can catalyze transformations. And some of the behaviors that go with this pattern are a future orientation, the sense that there's a future that you're moving toward. They tend to engage in a fair amount of praising, not overly so, but appropriately so when someone needs it. They seem to know when someone needs it. They have tend to use global and metaphoric language to communicate these meanings and significance, things that they observe. And they have an attitude of credulousness, to believe in. They want to believe in, and that's what they're looking to do. And they tend to have a quiet enthusiasm, so tend to be enthusiastic. Their interaction style It tends to be behind the scenes. So with behind the scenes, there's this pressing need to integrate, to take in information and see what fits together and what doesn't. They have a core belief that it's worth the time to integrate and reconcile many inputs. The aim of this style is to get the best result possible. And the talents are about this synthesizing, bringing things together, reconciling inconsistencies, searching for commonalities. So this is part and parcel of the Harmonizer Clarifier, as well as several other patterns. And the behaviors that you will observe is they tend to be fairly agreeable and accommodating and patient. They're not always agreeable, but people with this pattern do tend to be agreeable until something really crosses their values. Now, from this other lens, this new lens of intentional drivers, kind of the essence of this pattern would be called authenticating. So the quest for the authenticating driver is to authenticate and make sure it matches the values and standards that they hold or that are important for our project. And they want validated outcomes that you can trust are right. Now, sometimes those outcomes come from validation against some objective measures, or it can be validated from experience. So these are some of the themes that go with catalyst, behind the scenes, authenticating aspects of the Harmonizer Clarifier. Now let's take a look at the cognitive dynamics and the dynamics that are in a particular configuration for the Harmonizer Clarifier, INFP. So the primary processes, these are the processes that this pattern will tend to rely on the most. The leading role for this pattern is valuing. And this is knowing inside, knowing what's important, paying attention to whether there's consistency in the values and having things be in alignment. They support with interpreting, which is an extroverted intuiting. That's about reading between the lines. So having these flashes of insight that come in the moment, thinking about a particular person or a particular project. So it's an emerging kind of insight that gives a great deal of information to what is going on in any particular situation. And they like to share this, by the way, these insights. So the relief role is a process that is a supporting role. This is reviewing. They like to spend some time reviewing how things went in the past. So this is introverted sensing. Sometimes younger people with this Harmonizer Clarifier pattern may not exhibit as much of this, but later in life, a fair amount of it. It works in tandem with the interpreting. So you interpret, but you have a basis of what you've experienced before. The other end of the spine is what we call aspirational. So the process, the mental process that the Harmonizer Clarifier pattern looks to use often is segmenting, extroverted thinking. So sometimes this is a challenge as they're, having to put their world in order. So along the spine of the personality, working in tandem very often with the valuing introverted feeling is the segmenting extroverted thinking, which is about putting order on the external world. That order can be physical, that can be mental. So sometimes those with a Harmonizer Clarifier pattern may wind up using that a fair amount, and sometimes they may find it very draining and don't want to put any order, especially on the concrete world. So they can tune in, though, to what are going to be the consequences of this action. How should this play out? So these are the primary processes that are most of what we can see in the pattern of the INFP, Harmonizer Clarifier. But there is more. There are these processes that are available to them, but we call them the shadow processes. So they're just available. You can tap into them when you need them. They may not be as polished. They may be things that come up when you're under stress. And for some reason, you may wind up developing skill in those. So we take a look at sort of the opposite of the connecting and extroverted feeling in this opposing support role is using, so if in the leading role is introverted feeling, then the support role is extroverted feeling, and those two can work together. So sometimes they support each other, using these processes are used in support for each other. Sometimes they can be, someone with this pattern can be oppositional about how to connect with others and have certain rules they're going to stick by, for example. The critical parent role, now something that plays this role is often have access to it, but often it tends to be a way that they become self-critical. And for this pattern is foreseeing. It's introverted intuiting. So this introverted intuiting process is one where there are flashes of insights that come about what will happen. And very often when this process is used well, it is very powerful. It also can mean critical parent in the sense of when someone with these preferences of INFP is engaging in this process, they may feel like it doesn't measure up. So there's a couple of ways that it can be critical toward self or toward others. The other process used in tandem sometimes with the critical parent is experiencing or extroverted sensing. And this can happen where someone with a Harmonizer Clarifier pattern gets caught up in whatever is going on and sometimes being distracted by what's going on in the moment. Maybe indulging in things that are very sensual, chocolate, for example, whatever it is, it can be anything. And then the reason it's deceiving is it feels like this is going to solve the problem, whatever it is that we're experiencing in the moment for this pattern. And then the devilish role is where it sort of makes our feet go. So we wonder why we did it, and we get to say the devil made us do it. So this pattern for the Harmonizer Clarifier is the analyzing, the introverted thinking, where they can get caught up in and kind of stubborn about the categories that they're holding, and analyzing something and be very convinced that this is how it is. And they can get caught up in checking all of these analyses of things, how things fit. So this completes our little review of how each of the lenses help us understand the Harmonizer Clarifier INFP pattern. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Harmonizer Clarifier INFP personality pattern, and that it gave you some insights into yourself or others you know. Please join us for some of our other exploration of each of the 16 personality types on the Linda Berens YouTube channel.